Welcome once again to the Brownstone, Nero Wolfe's sanctuary of logic, orchids, and murder. Do tell us where in the world you're listening from, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts. Shall we begin? Nero Wolfe and the Widow's Silent Contract. The call came at 8:14 that morning. I was seated behind my desk, half committed to yesterday's crossword and a lukewarm cup of Fritz's chicory brew. The phone rang in a manner that suggested urgency without panic. I picked up on the third ring. Nero, Wolfe's office. Archie Goodwin speaking. The voice on the other end was steady but not casual. Female, older, with a practiced tone that had seen both wealth and grief. I must speak with Mr. Wolfe. Today. I'll pass along the request, I said. He has orchids from 9 to 11. Then lunch, which he protects like a bloodhound. Guards a lamb chop. You'd be looking at 3:30. Earlier. No, I said. 3:30 is the earliest time that doesn't require divine intervention. I'll be there. The line clicked off. No name, no details, no thank you. That left me curious enough to mark it down. By the time the grandfather clock in the hall struck 3:15, I had the red client chair positioned, ashtray cleaned, and my notebook open with 2 sharpened pencils. At 3:20, Fritz appeared in the doorway, hands respectfully at his sides. A Mrs. Honoria Lyle. Wolfe grunted, without looking up from his book. That was as close to permission as Fritz would ever get. I went to the door, opened it precisely as trained, and let her in. Honoria Lyle walked with the dignity of someone used to being noticed, but no longer surprised when she wasn't. She wore deep navy wool, gloves, and a single amethyst brooch at the collar. In her left hand, she carried a sealed envelope with a private banker's firmness. She entered the office and sat without waiting to be asked. Not rude, decisive. Wolfe put down his book, removed his glasses, and turned slightly in his chair. The yellow leather creaked, discreet and proper. I presume, he said, that you are the woman who demanded to see me. She inclined her head. I am Honoria Lyle, widow of Judge Silas Lyle, Manhattan Probate Court, 1924 to 1936. Wolfe nodded once. A name with reach. She placed the envelope on the edge of the desk, folded her hands in her lap, and met Wolfe's eyes squarely. I want to hire you, Mr. Wolfe, but I can't tell you why. Wolfe blinked. That is not how this works. You misunderstand. I will not tell you now. I will tell you only if I die. I shifted in my seat. Wolfe didn't move. You intend, he said, to retain my services against a hypothetical. No, she replied. I believe someone intends to kill me. I cannot prove it, but I feel it. Deeply. Have you contacted the police? No, I have no evidence, and I would not survive the scandal. Wolfe sighed, reached for a pencil, and tapped the eraser against his notepad. Madam, many people imagine they are in danger. A sensation of doom is not billable. She stood. Her hand trembled only slightly as she slid the envelope closer. This envelope contains 5 names. People I know well. If I die within the next 30 days, I ask you to open it. One of them will be responsible. She turned toward me. Mr. Goodwin, you seem like a man who can tell the difference between fear and fantasy. I'm placing my trust in you. Before Wolfe could reply, she stepped toward the door. I will contact you once more, next week, if I'm alive. And she left. Wolfe stared at the envelope, unmoving. Then he reached out and pushed it toward me. Put that in the safe. Do not open it. I thought you hated clients who dabble in mystery. I do, he said, but I hate being wrong more. That evening, after dinner, Wolfe lit a cigar and reclined with his 7th book of the week, Theophrastus Redivivus, I believe. I sat with the envelope still heavy in my mind. She believes she's going to die, I said. She believes someone wants her to die, Wolfe corrected. She's refined, controlled. not the type to throw melodrama around for sport. Wolfe puffed once, the smoke curling toward the dark velvet drapes. He said nothing. What's the harm in looking inside? He frowned. Mr. Goodwin, we were engaged conditionally. Until that condition manifests, we are not at liberty to violate it. You think it's genuine? I think it's rare. For a woman like that to court humiliation. You notice the gloves? I nodded. No rings. No rings, he echoed, and too tightly buttoned for ease. That brooch was meant to distract. Her left hand trembled. Her right did not. You're saying she's scared. I am saying, he replied, that she is accustomed to giving orders and being obeyed. But someone, quite recently, reminded her she is also vulnerable. Likely someone close. I stood, walked to the safe behind the bookshelf, opened it, and placed the envelope inside. What if she does die? I asked. Wolfe exhaled slowly, the cigar's tip glowing in protest. Then we are bound to earn our fee, and you, Mr. Goodwin, will have the unfortunate duty of exhuming motives from corpses both literal and social. I didn't sleep well that night. Something about her had stuck. The posture, the tone, the absolute certainty in her voice. She hadn't come to us out of nervousness or impulse. She had come because she'd already measured the coffin. The next morning, I called the Ansonia Hotel. She had checked in under her own name, as expected. No visitors logged, no complaints. Room service reported nothing unusual. I spent most of the day following up on the late Judge Lyle. Not much of a scandal record, but a few high-profile estate battles in the 30s. One notable case, the Tilden. Inheritance, shady from top to bottom. Might be worth digging. Wolfe, predictably, didn't stir from his chair before noon. He read, muttered about a corrupted hybrid of Miltonia, and requested beer before lunch. He said nothing about the envelope. At 3:15, the bell rang. Fritz arrived at my office door. A woman, he said. She insists. Name? She refuses. Describe her. Same as yesterday, he said. But changed. I opened the door. There stood Honoria Lyle, without her brooch, without gloves, and without the envelope. She stepped inside and said, I've changed my mind. Wolfe, already seated, closed his book and waited. I was wrong to ask you to guess in the dark, she said. I'll return tomorrow, at 3 o'clock. I'll tell you everything. Before we could respond, a loud knock echoed through the brownstone. Wolfe flinched. Fritz froze in the hall. I'll see to it, I said, already halfway to the door. No one was there, just a whiff of cigar smoke and a newspaper tossed on the steps. When I came back in, the office was empty. The red chair was still warm. Honoria Lyle was gone, and this time, she hadn't left a word. Honoria Lyle returned to the brownstone 2 days later. Same coat, same unhurried gait, but something had shifted. Not in her appearance, still composed, still precise, but in the way she looked, at the red chair before sitting in it, like it might bite. Wolfe had only just returned from the plant rooms. His orchid time had bled 5 minutes into our meeting, and he made no apology for it. He lowered himself into the yellow chair with care, folded his hands across his stomach, and nodded once. Well, Honoria placed the envelope on the desk once more. The same cream stationery, sealed with a small circle of wax, unbroken. It remains unopened, she said, and it must stay that way. Wolfe tilted his head. I indulge few ambiguities, Mrs. Lyle. You are asking me to enter a contract. With a ghost? No, with a witness. You presume I have agreed. She leaned forward, gloved fingers resting just at the envelope's edge. Mr. Wolfe, I understand your conditions. I accept them. But I must insist this. That envelope is not to be opened unless I die within 30 days. And if you live beyond that? Burn it. Wolfe's lips pressed into a thin line. Then why involve me at all? Because I believe someone plans to kill me. And I'd rather my death be inconvenient for them. Wolfe considered that. He tapped a finger against the arm of his chair. You could have sent this by post, or hired a lawyer. I trust neither. He gave a faint grunt, then looked to me. Mr. Goodwin, the envelope? I retrieved it from the safe and placed it before him. He didn't touch it. Mrs. Lyle, Wolfe said, I will accept the terms, with the following amendments. I require confirmation of your continued survival each week. One note, handwritten and dated. Should I not receive one, I shall consider the condition fulfilled. She nodded, agreed, and no further theatrics. Should you be threatened again, you will inform me at once. Another nod. She rose, slowly, turned toward the door, then paused. There are 5 names inside. No more, no less. I expect you'll need them if this ends badly. I offered to walk her to the door. Fritz had already retreated to the kitchen. As always, Wolfe hadn't moved from his chair. That left me escort duty, not that I minded. There was something about her, a dignity worn thin at the edges, the kind that money buys but grief shapes. At the threshold, she paused. You don't believe me, she said. I do, I replied. I just don't know what I believe yet. She gave a tight smile. Then she stepped onto the stoop. Manhattan's late autumn was soft that day. The sky hung low, a woolen grey that dulled the noise of cabs and heels. Honoria descended the steps slowly, her gloved hand brushing the iron railing. As I leaned against the jamb, eyes following her across the street, I saw him. A man in a dark coat and brimmed hat, leaning beside a newsstand, too still, too focused. He wasn't reading. He watched her, then noticed me watching him. He turned, calm, deliberate, and disappeared down the avenue. I closed the door, latched the bolt, and returned to the office. Wolfe was still seated, eyes closed. She had a tail. He opened one eye. Describe him. Tall, hat brim down. Didn't flinch when I caught him watching her. Wolfe grunted, then reached for the envelope. But he didn't open it. Not yet, he murmured. The contract stands. He placed it back in the safe himself, locked it, pocketed the key. I dislike mysteries without structure, he said. I nodded. And I dislike watchers who don't blink. Neither of us said it aloud, but someone had already started playing their hand. It was 3:15 when I heard the bell. Fritz appeared at the door of my office, his expression unreadable. She's returned. Wolfe, seated precisely in the yellow chair with his beer untouched, looked up. Show her in. Fritz vanished without another word. A moment later, Honoria Lyle entered the room. She was no longer composed. Her hair was pinned, but less carefully. Her gloves were creased. The amethyst brooch was gone, and the way she lowered herself into the red chair made it clear something inside her had been knocked loose. Wolfe watched her. He did not speak first. Her eyes flicked toward him, then down. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap. When she finally spoke, it was almost inaudible. I came to say something. We waited. She said nothing more. Wolfe exhaled. You were followed here again? She gave a slight nod, then shook her head, then paused. I'm not sure. Mrs. Lyle, I cannot act if you will not speak. I know. Her voice cracked. She looked up, just once. Eyes that had been polished for society now rimmed red, half-shadowed. I saw something, or someone. What did you see? I thought I saw him again, across from the hotel, but it was wrong. I think I was wrong. Wolfe adjusted his posture by a fraction. What changed your mind? She looked down. I can't be certain anymore. I stood quietly to the side, trying not to fidget. Wolfe let the silence hang just long enough. You may have made a mistake, he said, but someone has not. Then, 3 hard knocks at the front door. Not a bell, not a tap. A demand. Wolfe turned his head sharply. Mr. Goodwin, I'm on it. I left through the hall and reached the door in 3 steps. I opened it wide and fast. The stoop was empty. No one on the steps. No movement on the walk. Just an old man across the street lighting a pipe, and the wind nudging a stray paper bag down the gutter. I scanned the avenue. Nothing. I stepped out and looked both ways. No cab pulling away, no footsteps receding, no brimmed hat vanishing around. A corner. Whoever had knocked knew the layout, knew when to disappear. I shut the door and locked the bolt. By the time I returned to the office, the red chair was empty. Wolfe looked up from his desk, frowning, not surprised, but displeased. She left, he said. When? As soon as the door knocked. She stood, didn't speak, didn't look back. Out the front? No. He gestured toward the rear hall. Fritz is checking now. I moved to the side window, looked down into the garden. No sign of her, no swaying. Shrub, no footsteps in the leaves. I turned back. She was scared, I said. She didn't fake that. No, Wolfe replied. But someone wished to remind her she is watched. I nodded once. She saw someone near the hotel, and now again, here. She is not wrong, Wolfe said. But she is frightened too early. You think the threat isn't immediate? I think, Wolfe said, that fear, when applied without clarity, becomes an ally of the one who intends harm. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and we have not yet seen the harm, only its shadow. By the time I reached the Hotel Ansonia, the doorman had already seen enough to look interested but not involved. He nodded as I passed, but kept one hand tucked inside his coat pocket. The kind of man who preferred his gossip second-hand and his conscience clean. Room 417 was on the north wing, 4th floor, facing Broadway. Quiet side of the building, quieter still now. The hallway carpet was thick, but the air felt thinner than it should. A uniformed officer stood outside the door. He gave me a look that hovered somewhere between suspicion and boredom. Archie Goodwin, I said. I'm expected. He knocked once, then stepped aside. Inside, the light was low. The windows were half draped, the scent of lavender faint, beneath a sharper note, alcohol and age. Kramer stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, jaw set. Goodwin, he muttered, not looking up. Wolfe send you? I nodded. He grunted. Figures. The room was neat, bed made, one pillow slightly indented, a half-empty glass of port on the nightstand. Beside it, a bottle, opened, half gone, and next to that, sealed envelope, unmoved. Her body was on the chaise near the window. Honoria Lyle, widow, client, woman of silence, now utterly still. Her hands were folded. A book rested face down on her lap. The pages were uncreased. Sleeping pills and port, Kramer said. Maid found her this morning. I stepped closer. Not too close. I didn't need to. The details were already clear. The posture, the composition, the quiet that didn't belong. The maid stood near the door, clutching a white apron that looked like it had never touched a spill. Early 50s. Sharp chin, eyes damp but steady. I brought her breakfast at 8, she said. She didn't answer. You have a key? I asked. She nodded. For emergencies. Was the door locked? Yes. Window? Locked. Kramer cleared his throat. We're checking prints, but so far nothing strange. No visitors signed in. No staff recalls anyone coming or going. I stepped back toward the nightstand. The envelope was right where Honoria had left it, angled slightly, as if it had been placed with care. Still sealed, still untouched, the wax unbroken. Kramer noticed. What is that? She gave it to Wolfe, I said. Told him not to open it unless she died. Kramer blinked. And now she has. I didn't answer. He knew. Was it suicide? I asked. He shrugged. There's a note, of sorts. Just says, I was right. No signature. I frowned. She was nervous, I said, but she wasn't done yet. Kramer stepped to the window, looked out. We'll know more after the coroner's done. But so far, no bruises, no marks. Pills match the bottle. Port was opened last night. And no one saw a soul come in. He shook his head. I turned to the envelope, still silent, still waiting. I didn't touch it. Not yet. It was 6 o'clock sharp when I returned to the brownstone. The rain had started. Light, insistent, the kind that glosses sidewalks and hushes tires. Fritz took my coat. Wolfe didn't ask for a report. He knew I had one. I handed him the envelope. It was just as she'd left it. Wax seal intact, corner still dog-eared from where she'd placed it on his desk. He didn't hesitate. With a small silver blade from the top drawer, Wolfe sliced the edge cleanly and tipped the contents onto his blotter. 1 page. No letterhead, no signature. He read it once, then again, then handed it to me. If I'm dead, one of them did it. Ernest Burnley, Victor Frayne, Irma Kroll, Gerald Wexley, Lenore Lyle, no context, no motive, no reason, just 5 names and a sentence, built like a mousetrap. Wolfe leaned back, steepled his fingers, and looked at me. Well, he said. There they are. I nodded, reading the list again. She didn't even bother with pretense. No, Wolfe said. She intended the fact alone to be damning. Shall I begin with Burnley? No, Frayne first, then the woman. Irma Kroll. Yes, if she speaks, the list becomes a map. If not, a mirror. He reached for his beer, took 1 sip, then another. The orchids had been watered, the books were shelved, the seal had been broken. Now it was my turn. I set the list on my desk and began drafting a grid. 5 names, no overlaps. But if Honoria had written them, there was a reason. Either they all had motive, or one of them had motive enough to merit, hiding among the rest. Wolfe remained silent. He never liked premature theory. He preferred facts that whispered. I asked, "Any chance this was meant to mislead?" He shook his head once. Not with her temperament. She did not trade in drama. She knew the stakes. She did, he said, and she gambled with silence. Now we pay the debt. I pulled a file from the cabinet, started digging on Victor Frayne, banker, wealthy clientele, no criminal record, club memberships, 2, divorce, 1, expensive, suits, all tailored. Shall I schedule him? I asked. Not yet, Wolfe said. I want him surprised. Burnley? In time. The daughter, perhaps, will offer context. He looked toward the sealed page, now flattened beneath a glass. Paperweight. That, he said, is not a letter. It is a wound. I nodded, grabbed my coat and reached for my hat. Where to first? Wolfe asked. Frayne's office. After hours visit. Just me and the janitor. Wolfe closed his eyes. 1 dead woman, 5 living suspects, no reason, no confession. And me, I said, with a pen and a good memory. The brownstone door shut behind me. The rain hadn't stopped. Neither had the silence. Ernest Burnley kept an office on West 76th, 3 floors up from a framing shop, and exactly no signs to mark his name. The buzzer was unlabeled. The stairs creaked, and the hallway smelled faintly of varnish and resignation. I knocked twice. A pause. Then a lock turned. Another followed. Finally, the door opened a crack. Yes. Goodwin. I'm here about Honoria Lyle. The eye that met mine was a pale blue. Cold, but steady. He opened the door. The office was more atelier than workplace. Blueprints pinned on walls, shelves of wood samples, a single armchair that hadn't been used for comfort in years. No secretary, no ashtray, no clutter. He didn't offer me a seat. You're Wolfe's man. I am. She's dead. Yes. He nodded once. No visible reaction. She put my name on a list. She did. He moved to a drafting table, adjusted a lamp, then turned it off again. I suppose you want to know why. I'd settle for when you last saw her. He turned, leaned against the table. 2 months ago, maybe 3. She came here, Sat right. Where you're standing. About Lenore? Yes. His voice had a clipped weight. Precise, like he chose each word from a drawer marked necessary. She wanted me to stay away. Why? She thought I was ruining her daughter. Were you? He allowed himself half a smile. No more than anyone else. I stepped closer, careful not to crowd him. She tried to buy you off? She offered to make the situation less difficult. How? 10,000. Clean. In cash. He nodded. I declined. Why? He looked at me for the first time since I'd entered. Really? Looked, because I wasn't in love with Lenore anymore. That threw me. She knew that. Not then. Not fully. Why'd she want you gone if the thing was over? Because Honoria didn't believe in endings. Only threats. He turned to a shelf. Picked up a small block of rosewood. Set it down again. She said I was a stain on Lenore's future. She wanted a clean ledger. I wouldn't cooperate. You bitter. Not at her. Lenore? No, he said quietly. At myself. The tone shifted, just slightly. A man rehearsed in silence, letting something slip. Where were you Tuesday night? I was in Albany with my brother. Name? Harold Burnley, architect. We were drafting a commission bid. Anyone else see you? No one who'd remember. You didn't come back to the city at all? He shook his head. I stayed overnight. Took the train back Wednesday morning. I waited a beat. He didn't flinch. All right, I said. That's all for now. He walked me to the door, but didn't open it. She was a proud woman, he said. But fear eats pride like rust eats iron. I left him standing there, alone in a room of blueprints. Victor Frayn's office was on the 21st floor of a building that tried too hard. Chrome accents, marble in the lobby, an elevator man who wore gloves but didn't smile. I stepped out into a waiting room that smelled faintly of tobacco, wax polish, and money. His secretary, a narrow-eyed redhead with posture like a sword, took one look at my card and walked it into the inner sanctum. A moment later, she reappeared. Mr. Frayn will see you now. He was already standing when I entered, tall, manicured, and wearing a suit 2 threads short of silk. His tie pin glittered under a bank of shaded lamps. The furniture matched his tone, modern, expensive, and almost uncomfortable. Mr. Goodwin, he said, offering a handshake without warmth. You're with Nero Wolfe. I am. He motioned me toward a chair across from his desk. It was upholstered in something sleek, the kind that hissed when you moved. I didn't move much. Frayn sat with perfect posture, one ankle over his knee, fingertips pressed together. You're investigating Honoria. I'm following up, I said. She died under Wolfe's contract. He nodded with theatrical solemnity. Yes, terrible. She wasn't well, I'm afraid. Meaning. He gave a long sigh. She'd become paranoid. Believed someone was out to harm her. And you thought she was imagining it. I knew it. His smile flicked upward, measured. I handled her finances. Saw her weekly for over a year. Her mind had started fraying. She withdrew large sums, hid cash in books, asked me to audit. Donations she hadn't made. She accuse anyone? Only everyone. He reached into a drawer and retrieved a file. Here, he said. Notes she gave me, scribbled figures, totals that didn't match. Entire ledgers rewritten in pencil. He passed the papers across. I took my time reading them. Most were irrelevant. Grocery lists, dates, crossed out addresses. But one stood out. A column of withdrawals with initials beside each amount. The figures weren't large, but they didn't match anything else on record. You recognize these? He shrugged. She believed people were stealing from her. The maid, her lawyer, her daughter. Any of them ever catch wind of it? Hard not to, the way she behaved. Was she wrong? He raised his eyebrows, then lowered them just as fast. She was alone, older, with money. That makes anyone a target. But delusion, is its own enemy. I pocketed the page. You manage her estate? Only the liquid side. Investments, transfers. Did she change her will recently? Frayne hesitated. I wouldn't know. That's Wexley's department. Gerald Wexley? Yes. You two close? Not especially. Another flick of the smile. I waited. He folded his hands. She trusted him more than me by the end. And why's that? Because I told her the truth, that her fears were in her head. I stood. He didn't. Thank you, Mr. Frayne. He nodded once. I reached the door, paused, turned back. She marked you by name. That got a reaction. Barely. He said nothing, just smiled again. This time, it didn't reach his eyes. Irma Kroll lived in a basement flat on East 82nd, tucked beneath a tenement building with cracked shutters and flower boxes that hadn't bloomed since Coolidge. The hallway smelled of starch, rain, and burnt oilcloth. I knocked 3 times. A shuffle answered, then quiet. I knocked again. This time, the door opened. She was short, round-shouldered, and carried a face built for silence. Her hair was pinned too tightly, her blouse buttoned too high. She looked at me like I was either a taxman or a ghost. You're Irma Kroll, I said. She nodded once. I'm here on behalf of Nero Wolfe. The name landed. Her hands tensed. She didn't open the door wider. I'm not in trouble, she said. It wasn't a question. No, but your name came up, in connection to Honoria Lyle. I didn't kill her. I waited. She didn't blink. May I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. The place was clean, too clean. The kind of order that doesn't come from pride, but fear. 1 lamp, 2 chairs, no clock. A plate drying in the rack. A single photo on the mantel, faded, framed, in chipped brass. She sat on the edge of her chair. I stayed standing. You worked for her a long time, 18 years, and you were still in her employ when she died. No, I left 3 weeks ago. Why? She licked her lips. She dismissed me. For cause? No. Then why? I think she was afraid of me. That got my attention. She was afraid of you. Irma Kroll nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the table between us. She started acting strange, jumping at noises, locking her door at night. One day I knocked to bring her tea. She opened the door with a letter opener in her hand. Had she ever done that before? Never. Did she say why? No. But the week before, I'd seen her burning something in the fireplace. Pages, legal paper. I sat down quietly. Was it a will? I don't know, she said. But the next morning, a man came to see her. He stayed less than 10 minutes. After that, she dismissed me. Describe him. Tall, dark coat, hat low. I never saw his face. Did she speak to you afterward? She gave me 2 weeks. Pay and said not to come back. And you didn't? No. Her voice cracked just slightly. She was afraid. But not of me, of what I knew. I leaned forward. What did you know? She didn't speak, just stared. Was there a change to the will? Still nothing. Was it recent? A long pause, then, very quietly, yes. Do you know who the new beneficiary was? Her hands gripped the chair arms. I can't say. You mean you won't? Her silence was answer enough. Did someone pay you to keep quiet? She didn't move. Who? No reply. I rose, slowly. She trusted you, Irma. She looked up then. Eyes. Full. I didn't betray her? I nodded. I believe that. And I did. But someone else had. Fritz entered the office with his usual quiet precision. 2 steps in, hands folded, eyes calmly fixed on Wolfe. He wasn't holding a tray, which meant this wasn't about dinner. Wolfe was reclined in his chair, arms at rest, gaze distant, but not unoccupied. Fritz cleared his throat lightly. If I may. Wolfe looked up. Yes? Fritz glanced at me, then back to Wolfe. When Mrs. Lyle was here last, 2 days before her death, she had a scent on her. Faint, but familiar. Wolfe didn't blink. What kind of scent? Cherry, Fritz said. And almond. Not perfume. Wolfe's fingers twitched once on the armrest. You're sure? I cook with bitter almond extract once a year, and cherries often. It was neither floral nor cosmetic, and not from her clothes, from her skin. He said it plainly. No dramatics, just a cook with a memory sharper than most safes. Wolfe stood, not all the way, but enough to plant weight on the balls of his feet. That alone said more than a paragraph. Mr. Goodwin, he said, call Inspector Kramer. I was already halfway to the phone. Wolfe turned back to Fritz. You recall when precisely? Yes. When I opened the door, she passed by me. It was momentary, but sharp. I dialed. No one picked up. I left a message. Wolfe lowered himself back into the yellow leather with visible weight. Cyanide, he murmured. Fritz bowed his head slightly. That was my thought. Wolfe closed his eyes. The port was meant to mislead. The poison was not in the glass. Kramer called back at 7:30. His tone was already 3 notches past annoyed. You left a message? I did, I said. We need the autopsy report on Honoria Lyle. You got a subpoena in your coat I don't know about. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. Tell him the smell of bitter almond was present. I relayed the message. Kramer paused. You're sure? I'm not. Fritz is. That damn chef of his. That damn chef, I said, was the first to catch it. Before the city coroner, apparently. There was silence. Then a grunt. I'll send a man. No, Wolfe said from behind me. Tell him to read the report. Carefully. I passed it along. Kramer exhaled. We were going with sleeping pills and port. No sign of struggle. The port was poured, Wolfe said, but not consumed, or consumed only to aid the misdirection. Kramer cursed under his breath. We didn't run cyanide panels. It wasn't called for. Wolfe didn't gloat. He merely said, call your lab. Now. I hung up. Wolfe sat back again, the weight of deduction shifting over him like a coat he'd been waiting to wear. Someone substituted her medication, he said quietly, with something else, bitter enough to leave a trace, absorbed through the skin. Crushed pill, I offered. Possibly. Or residue on a glass, a spoon, a coin. Fritz re-entered with a small tray, this time holding 3 brandy glasses, all empty. She touched the rim of one, he said. Briefly, it lingered. Wolfe looked at the tray but didn't rise. The killing wasn't showy, he said. It was efficient. Professional? No, Wolfe said. Personal. Lenore. Lyle lived on the 5th floor of a building in the East 60s. Elevator, not doorman, and the kind of stucco that tried to look Parisian, but hadn't quite made it off the boat. Her buzzer worked. So did the security chain. I showed my card through the gap. You're with the police? Wolfe's office. A pause. Then the door opened. She looked exactly how you'd cast her. Tall, reed-boned, 32 by the driver's license, and 2 more by the eyes. Hair pinned back in a twist. Loose silk blouse. No ring. She had the kind of skin that didn't apologize for sunlight. I suppose you want to talk about my mother. I stepped in. The apartment was cool, barely furnished. 1 vase, 1 bookcase, 2 chairs, none of them matching. She closed the door behind me but didn't offer a seat. She's dead, she said. Yes? Yes. I'm not surprised. That's not quite the usual reaction. It's the honest one. She moved to a window and pulled the curtain half shut. The light cut across her cheekbone and caught in her lashes. I didn't kill her, she added. I haven't asked. You don't have to. You're not here for flowers. Where were you Tuesday night? In Paris. That's a long way from here. Yes. Passport? She didn't flinch, just walked across the room and retrieved a leather folder from a side table. She passed it to me. Stamped entry, Port Authority, New York. Date, Monday morning. You flew in 2 days before she died. She looked at the floor, then back at me. I didn't stay. You cleared customs. Yes. And then I left again. When? Tuesday morning. You have a return stamp? No. Then you're still here. She didn't reply. I handed her the passport. She placed it gently on the shelf and pressed her palm to its cover. You think I'm lying? I think you're dodging. I think you should leave. Your mother named you. She blinked. Named me? In a list. 5 names. 1 line. If I'm dead, one of them did it. She didn't move. That's it? She asked. That's all? Sounds like her. Judgment without explanation. She thought someone meant her harm. She thought everyone did. And you think she was wrong? She hesitated. I think she was the kind of woman who destroyed relationships, then blamed the rubble. You didn't speak often. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. Why? Now? She wrote me, said she was unwell, wanted to make peace. And? I didn't reply. I packed a bag and flew in. You were going to surprise her? I don't know. You didn't visit her? No. You came all the way here and didn't knock. She turned toward the window again. Her voice, when it came, was small. I was afraid of what I'd say. I stood. You'll need to speak with Wolfe. She didn't turn. I know. As I reached the door, she asked, Do you think I did it? I didn't answer. Not because I knew, but because I didn't yet. Gerald Wexley's office was panelled in walnut and smelled of ink, polish, and quiet money. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that lingers in trust funds and estate folders. Untouched, unmoved, and untouched again. He looked up as I entered. Mid-50s, clean shave, glasses, hair combed so neatly it made mine itch. Mr. Goodwin, he said, standing. I've heard of you. I don't know if that's good or bad, I replied, taking the chair opposite his desk. That depends, he said, sitting again, on what you've come for. I've come for the will of Honoria Lyle. His expression didn't change, but his fingertips curled just slightly against the leather blotter. You'll need to speak with the executor. I'm only the filing party. She listed you as her attorney. Yes. And you're telling me you don't know the contents of her will? I knew the version she filed in February of last year. It was brief, standard. You're aware she died last week. I read the obituary. And you haven't reviewed the will since? I've received no instruction to do so. Not from the executor. Not from anyone. He reached for a file, opened it slowly, slid a page across. That's the last signed version, filed. On February 12th, I glanced at the date. Then again, something didn't match. I leaned back. You're certain that's the latest? Yes. You filed it yourself? Yes. Wolfe had gone over Honoria's ledgers that morning. The filing reference number didn't match. I folded the paper, slow and neat. There's a problem, I said. Wexley smoothed his tie. Go on. The number on this form, S4261B, it was assigned to a different document. Something submitted in April. You can't file the same document twice. He blinked. Just once. But I saw the shift behind the lenses. I think you're mistaken. I think you're nervous. He stood, walked to the shelf behind him, ran a finger along a row of blue binders. That's not how our records are. Kept. Not yours. The clerk's. He paused. I stood too. Here's what I think, Mr. Wexley. Honoria rewrote her will. Recently. She did it with someone she trusted. He didn't move. And I think you filed it, then pulled it. Or someone paid you to. That's absurd. You're sweating. He turned then, fast. If you came here to insult me, no. I came here to find out why a dying woman trusted you with her last wish, and now you're acting like it never happened. He returned to his chair, sat heavily. There was a revision, dated, August. Where is it? I don't know. You filed it? He hesitated. Yes. And then he looked at the desk. She changed her mind. No, Mr. Wexley. You did. I picked up the file. Tapped the corner once against the wood. You're going to bring the original to Wolfe. Tomorrow. He didn't speak, but he nodded. Twice. Which meant he still had it, and someone else still didn't. Know that yet. The rain came down in fine diagonal lines, slicing across the brownstone windows like a delicate wire cage. The city had gone soft with fog, its edges smudged and dull. Fritz had just cleared away the supper plates when I spotted the envelope. It was tucked part way beneath the front door, cream-coloured, no markings, no stamp. Someone had slid it through, in silence. I bent to retrieve it, turned it over once in my hand, then took it to Wolfe, who was seated in his yellow chair with a glass of beer and Julius Caesar cracked on his lap. He didn't look up until I stood in front of him. "Something interesting?" he asked. "Possibly. We've received a visitor." He gave a tired grunt and extended a hand. I passed the envelope over. He opened it with a flick of his thumbnail and read the single page inside. Then again. Then he handed it to me. "Come alone, Battery Park, 1 o'clock. I can't speak in daylight. I know what happened." IK, no greeting, no signature beyond the initials, but we both knew the handwriting. Irma Kroll. Wolfe set down his book. "You'll go," I assumed, unarmed. Meaning this might be a trap. Meaning you are to observe, listen, and return. No dramatics. That leaves out my usual fun. He didn't smile. "Wear the grey overcoat," he said, "and take your hat. And Archie, if she speaks, get her words exact." At 20 past midnight, I left the brownstone. The fog had thickened into a cold, persistent drizzle. The sidewalks glittered under the street lamps. Taxis rolled through puddles with a hush like someone sweeping snow with wet canvas. Battery Park. At that hour is a different world. The bustle gone, the sea black, the buildings down to shadows and amber points. Ferry horns sounded like ghosts announcing themselves from across the Hudson. Down near the seawall, the iron benches glistened. Wet newspapers clung to the paths. Pigeons huddled, like stones beneath an awning. A single gas lamp flickered at the far edge of the old fort. She appeared at precisely 1. Irma Kroll came out of the fog from the direction of South Ferry, a figure in a long navy coat, collar up, her head covered, in a scarf soaked through. She moved quickly, as if already late for something. Her gloved hands were clutched in front of her. Her shoes made no sound on the wet path. I stepped out from beneath the trees. "Miss Kroll." She froze, barely half a second, then kept walking. "Don't. Stand still. Follow me." We moved across the gravel toward a latticework of benches and low hedges near the riverwalk. She didn't speak again until we stood with our backs to the railing, the East River behind us, the skyline dim and flickering. Through the rain, "Thank you for coming. Wasn't optional." "No," she admitted. "It wasn't." I waited. The rain ticked on the railing. "He offered me money," she said. "Frayne?" She nodded. "To do what?" "To destroy the second will." "How much?" 500. In cash. Folded in a white envelope. Delivered 2 days after she died. That's not hush money. That's panic. She looked at me. He didn't say it like that. He called it a gesture. He said it was meant to protect the family's reputation, that the updated will wasn't signed by the right witnesses, that it would only cause a fight, that I'd be doing everyone a kindness. "But you had the will?" "Yes. I kept it. After she was dismissed. I didn't trust what was happening." "Where is it now?" She hesitated. "I'll give it to Wolfe, I swear. Just not now." "Why not?" "Because someone's following. Me." My eyes shifted. The street was quiet. Only the sound of water lapping and a low hum from the ferry terminal. But there, past the last lamppost, a shape, leaning against a bollard. No umbrella, just a man in a dark coat. Too still. How long? A week. Who? I don't know. I think he's working for Frayne. Or someone who wants Frayne quiet. She stepped closer. "I want to do the right thing, but I don't want to die doing it." "You won't. You can't promise that." "No," I admitted. "But I can make sure Wolfe gets what you know." She pressed something into my hand. It was a piece of ribbon, torn, stiff with wax. "The seal from the envelope," she said. "I tore it before I read it." She was breathing fast now. He told her, she whispered, that if she sent that letter to Wolfe, there'd be no need for a will, that she wouldn't live long enough to see it read. And she still sent it. Yes. The man shifted. Irma's eyes widened. He's coming! Stay calm. No, she stepped back. I have to go. I've stayed too long. Irma, I'll send another message, but don't follow me. She moved quickly, slipping between hedges and vanishing, into the mist beyond the monument. I stood for a moment, unmoving, watching the shape lean back into the dark and disappear. I turned up my collar, pocketed the ribbon, and made for the street. It would be a long walk back to the brownstone. By the time I reached 9th Avenue, the rain had settled into a drizzle, just enough to hang on your collar and soak your cuffs without you realizing until your fingers ached. I didn't take a cab. No sense putting a tail in the back seat with me. The streets were quiet. A milk truck hissed past, and a grocer rolled down his awning beneath a buzzing light. I passed them all without looking back. Wolfe's instructions were clear. Observe, listen, return. When I stepped into the brownstone, Fritz had left a towel on the radiator and a cup of hot coffee on the tray by my desk. I left the wet coat on the stand and went straight to the office. Wolfe was awake, of course. The light was low. The orchids were quiet behind the glass. He was seated with his eyes closed and his fingers steepled. You're late. She had. Company. He opened one eye. Frayne. Not confirmed. Tall man. Dark coat. Stayed just out of reach. Wolfe nodded for me to go on. She confessed. Frayne paid her. 500. That's not nothing. No. And she kept the will. Wolfe sat forward slightly. She still has it? Yes. Says she'll bring it. But she's scared. Thinks someone's following her. She's not wrong. I handed him the ribbon. She gave me this. Said it's from the envelope. The one she tore. Wolfe examined it. Ran his fingers along the stiff wax. Sniffed it once. Cherry, he said. Same scent Fritz mentioned. Cyanide compound, likely. Used in sealing blends to mask tampering. She said the letter named Frayne. Said Honoria threatened to expose him. Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes again. So, we have motive, method, fear, bribery, and a missing will. She'll deliver it, Wolfe said, if she lives long enough. He drummed his fingers once against the armrest. Contact Kramer. Now. Now. He's awake. About what? To tell him he's wrong. I made the call. Kramer answered on the second ring, voice already thick with attitude. Goodwin, why are you calling me at 2 a.m? Because the case isn't closed. It's suicide, Archie. The tox screen was clear. You didn't test for cyanide. There was a pause. Come again? We've got cherry and almond compounds on both the body and the envelope sealant. Fritz caught it. Wolfe confirmed. That chef again? That chef just cracked your autopsy. Kramer muttered something I didn't catch, then barked out a curse. I'll get the lab on it. You'll also want to ask Frayne where he was the night before she died. Another long pause. You think he did it? I think Irma Kroll is still breathing. If she stops, you'll know you waited too long. I hung up. Wolfe didn't speak. He didn't need to. His look said everything. I sat down finally and rubbed my temples. She's going to vanish. Not yet, Wolfe said. She's scared. She's alone. She's got the only piece we don't. She'll return. You sound certain. She has no one else to give it to. I stared out the rain-slicked window, watching the city go quiet again. No cars. No voices. Only the sound of water on glass and the ticking of the hall clock. Midnight had passed, but the storm hadn't. The news came not with fanfare, but in Fritz's quiet voice, as I was finishing a third cup of coffee. Mr. Burnley has not answered his telephone this morning, he said, standing just inside the dining room. Nor yesterday, and there is a message. I lowered the cup. A message? He handed me an envelope. No return address, just our brownstone street number in blocky hand, like someone who'd never written anything soft. I cracked the seal. One line, ask who was at the hotel Tuesday at 2 p.m. Unsigned, I looked up. Fritz, when did this come? The postman rang an hour ago. I tucked the note inside my jacket. I'm going out. Burnley's studio sat 3 flights up from a locksmith on East 10th. The building had the resigned slouch of an aging actor, all charm and chipped brick. I knocked. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. The landlady emerged from a broom closet, squinting. He ain't here. How do you know? She gave me a look like I'd asked whether the sun was hot. His window's wide open. Been that way since yesterday. Mind if I check? She sniffed. If you break nothing. The key she handed over was smudged with ink and suspicion. I climbed the stairs. The door wasn't locked. Inside, chaos. Papers across the floor. A spilled lamp. A painting torn from its frame. The scent of turpentine and something else. Damp wool and lemon oil, maybe. I took a step. Whoever had been here wasn't after art. They were after order, turning it inside out. Sketches shredded. Envelopes sliced. Even the pipe on Burnley's side table was snapped in 2. And the calendar, still hanging. One date circled. Tuesday. 2 p.m. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe sat in his chair, arms folded like a Roman senator who'd outlasted the empire. He's gone, I said. Studio turned over like an apple cart. No sign of him. Wolfe's lips twitched. An apple cart, Archie? You'd prefer pear cart, he grunted. What else? Someone took time. Methodical but messy, like they wanted us to think. It was random. Was it? No. It was surgical. Letters cut open. Filing drawers empty. He stared at the ceiling a moment. They're cleaning up. Cleaning what? Wolfe's gaze was cold as stone. Traces. Lenore Lyle returned the same day. Coincidence. Manhattan's been built on them. She rang from the foyer, clipped and cool. I assume you know I've arrived. Charmed. I'm not here to charm you, Mr. Goodwin, or your employer. I've come for my mother's belongings. Bit quick, aren't you? Her voice went glacial. Grief has its own timetable. I didn't say what I thought. She hung up before the breath left her throat. Wolfe was sniffing orchids. He didn't look up. She's returned. Yes. She never left, he said, fingers toying with a spray of yellow petals. I blinked. Come again? She said Paris, but the customs records say otherwise. She entered the country 3 weeks ago. I sat down hard. You have customs records? I have sources, Wolfe said, turning to me now. Lenore lied. The question is why? Burnley, he nodded. She hated her mother, but she needed a shield. Burnley was convenient. That evening, I made myself a sandwich and didn't enjoy it. The envelope sat on Wolfe's desk, mocking me. Ask who was at the hotel Tuesday at 2 p.m. Tuesday. The day Honoria died. The day Burnley vanished. The day Wolfe had his lunch an hour late because Fritz had burned the sausage. One date. Too many coincidences. Then Fritz entered again. Another note, he said, voice neutral. Same hand. I took it. This time, just a hotel name. No room. No name. Just Tuesday. Wolfe turned in his chair. We're being summoned. The hotel was one of those midtown places with a false sense of grandeur. Red carpet threadbare in the corners, a lobby piano out of tune since the Hoover administration, and a bellhop whose jacket fit like a borrowed regret. I asked for the guest book. He refused, of course. So I gave him a look I'd learned from Wolfe, half disdain, half implied lawsuit. He blinked, then tilted his head toward the manager's office. The register was behind the desk, open to Tuesday. No Lenore Lyle. No. Burnley, but halfway down the page, R. Frayne. I took the name home like a stray dog with sharp teeth. Wolfe read the name twice, lips barely moving. Frayne, he murmured. Our gallant little fraud. He rose, slowly, and walked to the Globe bar. Rare. Whiskey. No, thanks. He poured anyway. This, he said, smells of desperation. Someone's tying knots and cutting threads in the same breath. You think Frayne wrote the note? He shrugged. It's either guilt or a frame job. I leaned back in the red chair. Lenore shows up. Burnley vanishes. Frayne checks into a hotel. Irma leaves anonymous notes. We're a few corpses shy of a Russian novel. Wolfe sipped. Let us hope we stay that way. Next morning, rain again. Manhattan wept with style. I checked Burnley's apartment. Still nothing. Same broken pipe. Same overturned drawer. This time, I noticed a missing canvas from the rack. Space between two sketches. Dustless. Empty. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe didn't speak. He just pointed to the envelope on his desk. Inside, a photograph. Burnley. Smiling. Taken from behind glass. Stamped on the back. Hotel Balzac. Tuesday. 1:57 p.m. 3 minutes, Wolfe said. Until what? Until someone decided he couldn't be seen again. I phoned Kramer. You think he's dead? I asked. He sighed. Nobody's found him, Goodwin, which ain't the same thing. But I got a bad feeling. Like someone's clearing. The board. You get the autopsy report from Honoria? He paused. It's coming. Why? Wolfe gestured. So I pressed. We think the cyanide came from pills. Swapped out. Kramer cursed under his breath. Then someone knew her habits. Like a family member, or a lawyer, or a servant. I looked at Wolfe. He looked back. Names danced like shadows across his brow. That afternoon, I heard it. Thump at the front door. Fritz never opened it. I did. Nothing but an envelope. Typed. Short. He's not dead yet, but he will be. Wolfe called a meeting, just the three of us. He sat, fingers steepled. Frayne was at the hotel. Burnley too. At nearly the same hour, Irma confirmed someone offered her money. The will was tampered with, and now a threat. He looked at me. What does that suggest, Archie? That we're not behind. We're the target. Wolfe nodded once, then, bring Miss Lyle in. Tonight. She will not decline. By 9, Lenore arrived, draped in mink and contempt. She sat, legs crossed like scissors, eyes twin razors. You summoned me. I did, Wolfe said. Why should I help you? You're not here to help, he said. You're here to protect yourself. She raised a brow. From what? He didn't. Blink. Murder charges, or blackmail, possibly both. Her lips parted, but no words emerged. Wolfe continued. You lied about your whereabouts. You contacted Burnley. You benefited from your mother's death. She stood fast. You have no proof. Not yet, Wolfe said, but the clock is moving. She hesitated. Then she left. Wolfe turned to me. She's guilty of something. I just don't know what yet. The rain hadn't stopped. Outside, the city twitched in sleep. Street lamps bleeding light across wet pavement. Burnley had vanished. The will had vanished. The truth was still hidden, but not for long. It was 3:10 when Inspector Kramer arrived. No warrant, no invitation, just rain on his coat and a file under his arm. Fritz refused to open the door naturally. I did it myself, and the look Kramer gave me said he hadn't slept. Or maybe he had, but on the truth, and it hadn't softened. Wolfe looked up from his desk. Inspector? Wolfe. Kramer brushed past me. He dropped the file on the blotter like a brick. You were right. Wexley lied. I raised a brow. Wolfe didn't. Define the lie. That will, Kramer said. The one Wexley filed after Honoria's death. It's worthless. Wolfe's hand hovered over the decanter. Worthless. It's a copy, and it's not the most recent version. Wolfe poured himself half an inch of beer. So, where is the real one? Kramer tapped the file. Turned up in a safety deposit box under Honoria's name. Witnessed. Signed. Dated. 6 weeks before the one Wexley submitted. And the beneficiary? Lenore. I whistled low. Kramer added, She gets everything. House, paintings, bonds, the works. I looked at Wolfe. He didn't blink. So the forged will was used to keep the estate away from Lenore, but now the original has surfaced, naming her as heir. Correct. Then someone tried to disinherit her. Looks that way. But did so by forging a will that still listed her, just with limited control. Kramer nodded grimly, and then tried to suppress the real one. Wolfe stood, slow as dawn. No, they should have destroyed both, the copy and the original. Exactly, I said. Why leave either? That, Wolfe murmured, is what troubles me. Kramer lit a cigar, frowned at the window. I don't like this, Wolfe. Someone planted that first will deliberately. Wexley? He swears it came from Honoria directly, but he's cagey. Wolfe sat. He submitted a copy, correct? Yes. No signed original. Claimed it burned in a fireplace accident. I coughed. How poetic. Too poetic, Wolfe said. Did you verify the handwriting on the real will? Kramer's mouth twisted. Matched. Forensics confirmed it. Honoria's signature. Clean and consistent. Same with the witnesses. Wolfe leaned back. So the original is authentic and recent, yet it vanished until now, which means someone had it and let it surface when convenient. I scratched my chin. Lenore didn't do it. Kramer eyed me. Why not? She's a lot of things, but subtle's not one of them. If she had the real will, she'd have walked it into the reading room herself. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Unless she wanted someone else to present it, to keep her hands clean. Kramer frowned. And the motive? Protection, Wolfe said softly. She feared suspicion, so she let another source deliver her salvation. I stepped in. Which brings us back to Burnley. Missing, Kramer muttered. And likely not on vacation. Fritz brought in coffee, black, strong, and late. As he poured, Wolfe turned to me. What did Irma say again? That Frayne offered her money to destroy the new will. Wolfe tapped the table, yet it survived. So Irma took the cash and kept the document. Or someone intervened, Wolfe replied. Burnley, I nodded. Maybe he retrieved it, hid it somewhere, then vanished. Kramer rubbed his temple. This is turning into a circus. No, Wolfe said. It's turning into a noose. Outside, the rain intensified. Inside, the temperature dropped, and no one moved. Wolfe didn't rise, didn't blink. He simply tapped a finger on the arm of his chair. Archie, when you visited Lenore, did you observe anything curious? Beyond her treating me like a chipped teacup? No. But she had travel dust on her shoes, Manhattan mud. And she claimed she'd just flown in from Paris. Lying clearly, Kramer said. Clearly, Wolfe echoed. I nodded. She was in town, maybe even at the hotel. Wolfe closed his eyes. What hotel? I reached into my coat pocket. Fritz found this an hour ago, dropped through the mail slot. No stamp, no return address. I handed it to Wolfe. The envelope was yellow, standard. The paper inside was lined, ruled, folded once. Wolfe unfolded it with 2 fingers. Kramer leaned closer. Ask who was at the hotel Tuesday at 2 p.m. Hotel names not listed, I said. No handwriting we recognize. Wolfe tilted his head. A warning? A lead? Or both, Kramer muttered. Burnley was last seen Monday night. And the will appeared Thursday, Wolfe added. A 48-hour window. Fritz hovered silently by the bookcase, coffee pot still in hand. Wolfe sipped. We must assume Burnley possessed the real will, and someone knew it. I stared out the window. That studio, yes, was ransacked like someone expected to find something, but not just anything. Something paper-sized, specific. Kramer scowled. A search for the will. Indeed, Wolfe said. But the will reappeared, so either the thief failed or changed their mind. It was then Wolfe turned in his chair, slowly, deliberately, and fixed his gaze on me. Archie. Yes? You will visit Gerald Wexley again. Politely inform him the original will has been recovered. Kramer scoffed. You want to spook him? Wolfe's lip curled. I want to watch which way he runs. I took my notebook from the desk. What should I be listening for? Wolfe tapped his glass. Inconsistencies, half-formed alibis, evasions too neat. He's a lawyer, I said. That's his mother tongue. Even so, Fritz cleared his throat. Shall I serve lunch, sir? Wolfe waved a hand. Shortly. Kramer shifted. Do you think Wexley's involved in more than forgery? I think he may be complicit, Wolfe said. But whether by choice or by pressure, that remains unclear. And Lenore? Wolfe nodded once. Central, always was. The wills, the inheritance, the vanished painter. All roads bend back. Outside, the rain fell steady. Inside, I stood. Kramer stayed seated. Fritz disappeared to the kitchen, and Wolfe remained very still. Then softly, he spoke. It's not just about who gains, it's about who feared her. I blinked. Lenore? No. Honoria. Kramer squinted. She was losing her grip, Wolfe. Daughters drift, affairs fade. Yes, but even in decline, some women command. Fear, loyalty, jealousy, guilt. Kramer stood now. So who burned the will? Who broke into Burnley's studio? Someone protecting Lenore? Or someone protecting themselves from what she might learn? And Frayne? Wolfe gave no answer. Kramer sighed. I'll get a trace on the hotel angle. Might take a day. Wolfe's eyes didn't open. Do it quietly. I reached for my coat. I'll visit Wexley. Kramer put on his hat. Let me know what he says. Wolfe murmured. Better yet. Let me know what he doesn't. And with that, we left the brownstone, stepping into the wet hush of Manhattan. The city held its secrets close that day. But not for long. The room was set like a silent ambush. The red guest chairs stood in a crescent. Wolfe sat in his yellow throne, hands folded on the armrests, eyes fixed but half-lidded. The air was thick, with old leather and the faint aroma of Fritz's afternoon espresso. 5 suspects. 1 orchid room. Irma Kroll arrived first, glancing around as though someone might leap from behind a curtain. She sat on the far left, smoothing her gloves, lips tight. Next came Warren Brackett, stepping in with exaggerated calm. He made a production of removing his fedora and nodding to Fritz, who of course did not acknowledge him. Honoria Lyle swept, in third. She wore navy wool and indifference. Her eyes landed on Wolfe, and stayed there, sharp as surgical glass. Gerald Wexley followed, fidgeting with his lapel. His breath whistled faintly through his nose, a sure sign of pressure. Lastly, Victor Frayne, the painter. Late by design. Smelling faintly of turpentine and cigarettes, he slumped into his seat like a deflated marionette. Wolfe's eyes didn't flicker. Thank you all for your punctuality. Brackett shifted. You said this was informal. It is, Wolfe said. For the moment, Archie stood to one side, notebook closed, hands behind his back. I didn't need to take notes. I was watching eyes, knuckles, throat muscles. Lenore crossed her legs. Are we accused of something? Wolfe blinked once. Not yet. Irma said, Then why summon us? Wolfe leaned back. Because a woman is dead and a man is missing. Silence. The fireplace crackled once. I wish to clarify timelines, Wolfe said, and ask tolerable questions. He turned his gaze to Brackett. You claim you were with a client Tuesday afternoon. Which hotel? Brackett coughed. Crescent Arms, Midtown. Room number. He hesitated. I don't remember. Wolfe's eyebrow lifted. A lawyer forgets his client's location, Wexley spoke. This isn't legal protocol. You've no authority. I require no authority, Wolfe said. Only attention. Archie stepped forward, arms still behind him. Frayne chuckled. You're doing this for show. No, Wolfe said. For clarity. He looked to Lenore. You said you were in Paris the day Honoria died. She met his eyes. I was. And yet your passport indicates re-entry on Sunday. She didn't flinch. I returned early. To surprise your mother. To avoid her. Archie noted the flicker, a twitch in her left cheek. Wolfe nodded. You visited her? No. Irma shifted. You were seen near 5th and Vine that morning. Lenore turned. By whom? Irma said nothing more. Wolfe turned to Frayne. Mr. Frayne, when did you last see Burnley? Frayne rubbed his temple. 3 nights ago. He was painting something new. Orchids, I think. Wolfe's tone was gentle. And you saw him alive? I did, Brackett interjected. This is absurd. Wolfe turned to him. Mr. Brackett, you said you saw the amended will, yet when it reappeared, it bore an older date. You lied, Wolfe said simply. Brackett's jaw tightened. Wexley muttered, This is entrapment. No, Wolfe said. This is patience. He gestured to me. Archie, I opened the small file I'd brought from the safe. The envelope found in our vestibule, I said. Unsigned, but postmarked within the city. I handed it to Wolfe. He passed it to Lenore. Recognized the handwriting. She didn't touch it. No. Odd, Wolfe said. It matches a note sent to Burnley 2 weeks ago. We have both. Frayne's mouth opened, closed. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. This game ends now. Archie's fingers flexed behind his back. I was watching the sweat, and it was starting to show. Wolfe didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. In this room, he said, someone swapped a will. Someone ransacked Burnley's studio. And someone knows what happened Tuesday at 2 o'clock. No one spoke. Archie stepped closer to the desk, laying down a stack of facsimiles. The original will, the false submission, the envelope, and this. I tapped the top paper, an eyewitness report from a desk clerk at the Hotel Midfield. 5 names, 1 signature. Wolfe let that hang. Kramer had delivered the report that morning. I'd read it twice. Brackett had signed in under a false name. Lenore's name wasn't listed, but a woman matching her exact description had asked for Burnley's room key. Brackett cleared his throat. I was trying to protect the firm. Wolfe didn't blink. From what? Truth. Irma stood. I think I've heard enough. Wolfe's voice cut clean. Sit. She sat. Victor, Wolfe said mildly, you dislike Burnley. Why? Frayne didn't deny it. He was arrogant, always talking about legacy, influence. He thought his sketches would hang beside Goya. Were they worth stealing? Frayne scoffed. Not unless you liked orchids and ego. Archie shifted. Wolfe saw it. Lenore's eyes were on me. Hard and calculating. You returned from Paris, Wolfe said. You had reason to believe your mother had changed her will. She hadn't told me anything. No, Wolfe said, but Gerald Wexley had, weeks earlier. Wexley's lips parted, but no sound came. She came to see you, Wolfe said. To finalize the amendment. You filed it, but someone intercepted it. Archie leaned forward and swapped it with an older draft that favored Lenore. Lenore spoke, her voice cool. Why not just destroy both? Wolfe's voice was softer now. Because the real criminal needed time. They wanted the illusion of a valid will, and they needed a scapegoat. Brackett spoke. You're saying... I'm saying, Wolfe replied. The deception was elegant, but not airtight. Frayne stood. This is ridiculous. We're being accused without proof. Wolfe glanced at him. I've made no accusation. Archie stepped to the window, parting the curtain just enough to peer at the street below. The fog was rolling in again. Burnley's studio, I said, wasn't just ransacked. It was cleaned. That takes time. Whoever did it wasn't in a hurry. Lenore finally said, Are we under arrest? Wolfe shook his head. Not yet, but I suggest none of you leave Manhattan. Fritz stepped into the room with a tray, immaculate, as ever. 5 demitasses of coffee. No one reached for one. Wolfe sighed. Fritz, perhaps just for me. Fritz delivered it silently. His eyes passed briefly over the suspects. Unreadable. Wolfe took a sip, then continued. This crime is not merely about inheritance. It is about fear. The silence was brittle. Fear of exposure, Wolfe said. Fear of failure. Fear of legacy crumbling in the hands of those unworthy. Archie raised an eyebrow. That sounded like Wolfe almost getting philosophical. Wexley said, I want legal counsel. By all means, Wolfe replied. Just don't instruct them to forge documents this time. Wexley turned pale. Archie stepped away from the window. One of you knows who sent that note. One of you knows why Burnley vanished. You all have pieces. Wolfe looked at them one by one. By this time tomorrow, he said, I will have the whole, and he meant it. I watched their hands, their eyes, their shoulders. Brackett was crumbling. Wexley was rattled. Frayne was restless. Irma, tense. And Lenore had settled into stillness, the stillness of someone who'd already made a decision. Wolfe nodded to me. The trap was set, and it had started to snap shut. The room was quiet, tight with breathless tension. Wolfe had not risen from his chair. He didn't need to. He merely shifted his weight forward, the polished arms of the yellow chair creaking faintly under the pressure of intent. He glanced once toward me. I nodded and shut the door. No interruptions, Wolfe said. Across from him, the red guest chairs held their weight. Brackett, Frayne, Irma Kroll, Lenore Vale, and Gerald Wexley. Kramer leaned against the wall, arms crossed, not interfering. Not yet. Wolfe took a breath. This began with a death, a natural death, some insisted. Sleep, pills, a tired heart. He shook his head. But no, Honoria Vale was poisoned. Frayne frowned. But the coroner, Wolfe silenced him with a look. The coroner missed it. But the compound was subtle, derived from belladonna, masked with a sedative base. He glanced to Irma. The prescription was filled 2 days before her death, by a trusted aide. Irma's mouth opened, then closed. The pills were tampered with, Wolfe continued. Not the bottle, the pills. Someone had the knowledge, and the motive. Wexley's jaw clenched. Wolfe sipped his beer, then set the glass down without sound. She did not die peacefully. She died confused. Her final thoughts likely blurred, disoriented. That confusion was not just chemical. It was emotional. He steepled his fingers. She had changed her will. She wanted secrecy. She didn't trust lawyers, family, or staff. She trusted herself. Lenore's voice cracked. She didn't tell me. No, Wolfe said, because you were the beneficiary, and in that house, love was a liability. He let the silence sit, then continued. Gerald Wexley filed the new will, but when the estate review began, the submitted document was an older version, one that excluded Lenore. Kramer spoke then. So he swapped the will? Yes, Wolfe said, but not to gain money. That part's clever. He turned his gaze fully to Wexley. You weren't trying to enrich yourself. You were trying to avoid blackmail. Wexley stood. That's... Sit, Wolfe said. Wexley did. Wolfe's tone did not rise. Irma Kroll saw something. Enough. To corner you. Irma's voice was thin. I never... You left a note, Wolfe said, begging for a meeting. You feared what he might do next. I stepped forward and laid down the envelope. Your handwriting. No signature. But the hotel cameras... Wolfe raised a hand. Irma saw Wexley enter Honoria's room the day before her death. Late. Without announcement. She confronted him. He paid her. Frayne stared. So Irma did nothing, Wolfe said. She feared him, but she also needed him alive. He turned back to Wexley. But Honoria, she was the problem. She had begun asking questions. She no longer trusted you. She told no one, but she planned to audit the firm. Wexley's voice cracked. She would have ruined everything. Wolfe nodded once. So you ensured she couldn't. Gerald Wexley didn't speak. His eyes moved to the window. No escape there. Wolfe pressed on, quiet as velvet drapery drawn against a cold night. You had the knowledge to alter the pills. You had access. And you had motive. He turned his gaze toward the fireplace. It wasn't lit, not tonight. You could have destroyed both versions of the will, Wolfe mused. But you didn't. Archie paced behind the guests, hands in his pockets, steps slow. You left the old will in circulation. Why? Guilt? Panic? No, Wolfe answered himself. You were protecting someone. He glanced to Lenore. Not protecting her, he clarified. Framing her. If the original will vanished, all suspicion would have vanished with it. But by leaving one version behind, Wolfe said, you made her look like the accidental heiress, not the intended one. That made her a target. Lenore shifted in her seat. Brackett looked at her sharply. Frayne narrowed his eyes at Wexley. Wolfe sat back. You weren't just afraid of discovery. You were furious she inherited everything. And Honoria didn't warn you. That was the betrayal. Wexley's lips moved. No sound came. Then, softly, she was going to ruin me. She wrote me out. You wrote yourself out, Wolfe said. Years ago, when you stopped serving her and started serving yourself. Kramer stepped forward. Irma, is this true? Her chin quivered. She nodded. I saw him coming out of her room. I asked questions. He gave me money. I didn't know she was dead. Wolfe's voice was almost kind. She was still alive, but not for long. Archie stopped pacing. He looked at Wolfe. Wolfe nodded once. Kramer stepped behind Wexley. The lawyer didn't move. You know the drill, Kramer said. Wexley stood. His voice was empty. She never should have changed the will. She changed more than that, Wolfe said. She changed who she trusted. It was too late for her, but not for the truth. As Kramer led Wexley out, Wolfe turned to the rest. This consultation, he said, is concluded. He reached for his beer. It was warm. He drank it anyway. The air in Wolfe's office still held the residue of tension. Even the radiator seemed to hum differently. Archie stood near the globe, spinning it absently. Kramer was the last to leave, naturally. The others had filed out, some dazed, some bitter, some oddly quiet. Gerald Wexley was in custody. Lenore Vale had fled to the guest room in tears. Fritz, ever discreet, brought her brandy. And Wolfe remained unmoved in the yellow chair, fingertips tented. Kramer adjusted his coat. His hat rested on his knee. I don't like being used, he said. Wolfe didn't lift his eyes. No man does. Kramer scowled. But you were right. He cracked. He was already cracked, Wolfe replied. You merely collected the fragments. Archie watched the exchange with quiet amusement. Two bulls in one very intellectual china shop. Kramer rose. He took his time. I've filed the report. It reads clean. Wexley gets indicted. The will mess goes to probate. Irma gets a pass. No, Wolfe corrected. She gets penance. There's a difference. Kramer sighed. I came here to say thanks, he muttered. Don't expect a speech. Certainly not, Wolfe said. Archie couldn't help himself. You want a handshake too, Inspector? Kramer growled. Watch it, Goodwin. Always do, Archie said. He smiled. Kramer didn't. He turned back to Wolfe. One of these days, you'll make a mistake. Wolfe finally looked up. That would be regrettable. No, Kramer said, putting on his hat. That would be justice. He left without another word. The front door clicked shut with finality. Archie exhaled. You think he meant that? Wolfe poured himself a fresh beer. I think he believes it. That suffices. The snow had begun its descent around noon. By now, it clung to the sills. Quiet, persistent. Archie moved to the window. Lenore's silhouette could be seen in the upstairs parlour, still as if holding breath. He didn't envy her. Wolfe took a sip. She was never meant for money. No, Archie said. She was meant for music. Wolfe did not answer. He turned the beer glass once, slowly, in his hand. Archie crossed to the desk and flipped open his notepad. The kind of silence you can't write down, he said, but you still hear. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. Your metaphors are improving, if not yet tolerable. Archie smirked. Thanks, boss. I'll have that carved into my tombstone. He jotted down the closing lines for the case report. The scratch of the pen was the only sound for a moment. Then Wolfe spoke, as if from a distance. Honoria's greatest mistake wasn't the will. It was believing trust could replace caution. Archie nodded, but didn't look up. She trusted the wrong man, and she kept her secrets locked too tight. Wolfe swirled the last of his beer. In this world, a sealed envelope is less dangerous than an open mouth. Outside, a horn blared faintly. A cab braved the slush of Madison Avenue. Somewhere, a man cursed the snow. A woman pulled her coat, tighter. The city carried on. Inside the brownstone, it was warm, almost peaceful. Archie stood, stretching. You want me to call Fred? Make sure the story doesn't leak too early. Wolfe shook his head. Let it leak. Truth, like blood, finds its way. Archie tucked the notebook into the drawer. You ever wonder, he said, how many cases like this we've got left? Wolfe closed his eyes. Not sleep, just silence. Enough, he said. Archie looked to the fireplace. The embers were low. I'll have Fritz bring you another beer. Wolfe didn't reply. The stairs creaked. Lenore's footsteps, soft, hesitant. Archie didn't move to intercept her. Some contracts, even, silent ones, had to be lived through. He opened the door to the hallway. The front glass was fogged. Snow was heavier now, white on brick, ice on stone. He turned back once. Wolfe was still, beer untouched, staring not at the fire, but through it. Archie whispered to no one. Some contracts are signed in ink. Others are sealed in fear. He pulled on his coat. Time to let the city breathe. The clink of porcelain drifted from the kitchen, delicate and final, like the curtain drawing on a stage. Fritz moved without flourish, his hands steady as ever. He sliced, the cherry tart, the filling rich, a slow spill of red against white plate. The scent of almond and butter floated through the brownstone, softening even the sharp corners of recent memory. I stood in the doorway, leaning one shoulder against the frame. Wolfe sat at the small kitchen table. Not his domain, but tonight. He had made the rare exception. Report typed? He asked, not looking up. 2 copies, one for the drawer, one for your files, I said. He gave a short nod, eyes following Fritz's precise motion as he placed the tart before him. Wolfe picked up his fork and examined the crust. No poison this time, just skill and trust. He took a bite. Tolerable, he muttered. Fritz's eyebrow lifted a hair, which in his language might have been the equivalent of throwing his hands in the air and sobbing with joy, but he said nothing, simply cleared the counter and stepped back into the shadows of his own pride. The light was low in the kitchen, a single bulb above the table casting gold across Wolfe's face. The air was still, but not heavy, the kind of stillness that comes only after everything has been said, after truth has carved its path through denial and silence. I sat down across from him. My glass was half full. I didn't touch it yet. You know, I said, there was a moment, after she died, where I thought maybe this one would stay clean. Just an accident. No knives in the back, no poison in the tea. Just a tired old woman and her heart. Wolfe looked at me then. Not sharply, just enough to let me know he had heard. She was never tired, he said. Only wary. That landed. He took another bite. I picked up my glass and turned it once in my hand. Gerald will talk, I said. They all do, eventually. No, Wolfe replied. He won't. There was no dramatics in the way he said it. Just fact, like he was reciting a name from the phone book. You think he'll stay quiet? I think he always planned to. Fritz returned with a small glass of cassis for Wolfe, the dark liquid catching the overhead light in a slow shimmer. Wolfe did not thank him, nor did Fritz expect it. I took my fork and slid a piece of the tart onto it. The crust was firm, the filling warm. A good bite. I chewed slowly, then reached for my glass. You know, I've typed a lot of reports in that office, I said. Poisonings, betrayals, murders, broken hearts. But this one, I swirled the liquid gently. This one felt like writing a confession, not ours. Theirs. Justice, Wolfe said, is often a confession in disguise. I raised the glass, not to toast, just to acknowledge. To Honoria, I said. She paid every debt, even this ones no one wrote down. Wolfe raised his own, almost imperceptibly. The gesture was small, but it was there. We drank. Outside, wind brushed faintly against the window panes, drawing long shadows across the kitchen tile. I could hear Manhattan outside, soft wheels on wet pavement, a cab horn far off, someone's cough 2 floors below. But in here, it was still the season of reckoning. Fritz excused himself with a whisper of linen. The door swung quietly behind him. She wanted secrecy, I said. Honoria, and in the end, she got it. Wolfe's gaze dropped to the tart, now more crumbs than substance. Secrecy is a shield with 2 edges. Gerald hid behind it, I said. He wielded it, Wolfe replied, until it cut him too. I leaned back, stretching the stiffness from my shoulders. I can't stop thinking about her handwriting, I said. Those letters we found in the drawer, careful loops, tiny corrections. She never wrote a word she didn't mean. She never trusted the spoken kind, Wolfe said. Fear makes archivists of the wary. The words hovered in the kitchen, too large for the space. She kept it all, I said. The will, the receipts, that note to the nurse with the dosage instructions. She knew the game, Wolfe murmured. Better than anyone. I let the silence stretch. It didn't hurt, not anymore. Burnley's disappearance, I said finally. We'll never know what he saw, or what he feared, Wolfe said. Do you think Lenore knew? Wolfe gave it a moment. She suspected, he said, but she was not prepared to prove it. And Irma? She profited by her silence. I sighed and tapped the last crumb on my plate with the flat of the fork. You ever get tired of liars? I asked. Liars? Wolfe echoed. No, they are at least consistent. I grinned. You're a real optimist when you want to be. I am practical, he said, setting his glass down. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere deeper in the brownstone, the radiator hissed like a sleeping cat. Wolfe shifted, bracing both hands. On the arms of his chair, a slow pivot of effort. The weight of the case, though not physical, seemed to settle across the room with him. I shall go to the orchids, he said. Now? They require attention. You just closed a murder, I said. Shouldn't you, I don't know, rest? I will, but not here. He stood, not abruptly, not laboriously, just deliberately. I've left the tart for you, he said, nodding at my plate. That's generous. It's Fritz's work, Wolfe said. It deserves not to be wasted. He stepped toward the hall. Before vanishing into the deeper corridors of the house, he paused, just slightly, and looked back. Archie. Yes, truth, when buried long enough, will rot, and the stench always finds its way out, I finished. He nodded once. Gone. I stayed in the kitchen. A while longer. I poured the last of the burgundy into my glass and raised it again. To the contract no one signed. To the widow who died with secrets, to the man who tried to erase her, and to the truth, slippery, stubborn, and always too late. The cherry tart sat in front of me, waiting. I picked up the fork, and I began to write the last sentence of the report.